The warning they ignored, the Galactic Council, was never afraid of Earth. To them, humans were just loud, emotional, and reckless. They laughed when Earth was invited to join the Council. They rolled their eyes when humans spoke of peace, respect, and patience, and they completely ignored the warning. The one that came just before it all began. It happened during a small diplomatic meeting. A young human ambassador stood in the center of a giant alien hall. He looked calm, quiet, even friendly. And he said something that no one paid attention to at the time. "Please understand, we are still being nice." The aliens laughed, some smirked, others whispered jokes in their own languages. A few high-ranking generals even walked out. No one realized that moment would be remembered forever. A few weeks later, a mining colony called Vano 6 went silent. The colony was owned by the Gregory Empire. It had a full garrison of soldiers, scanners, and orbital defenses. But in one night, everything vanished. When reinforcements arrived, they found something terrifying. No bodies, no battle signs, no explosions. Just buildings melted at the edges, as if burned from the inside. The command center was destroyed, but on one of the steel walls, something was burned deep into the surface. One word, written in human English. Enough. The word glowed faintly with heat. The air smelled of ash and cold metal. The alien commander. Unseen, General Varn looked around and whispered, "This wasn't an attack. This was a warning." The council demanded answers. They called Earth, held emergency sessions, shouted, blamed, threatened. But Earth said nothing. No reply came from human leadership, just silence. Then the rumors began. A hidden protocol called Project Ember. A war doctrine not meant for open conflict, but for punishment, not to conquer, but to erase. No one believed it at first. But then more things started happening. A scout ship near the human border disappeared. A weapons lab on the planet Drax exploded without warning. And every time, the only clue left behind was the same. "We warned you." The words were burned into metal, carved into stone, or whispered through hacked transmissions. No fingerprints, no soldiers caught, no proof, only fear. The Council thought they could scare Earth with numbers. They sent a fleet of over 100 warships to patrol near human space, to show power, to send a message. But when they arrived, the ships found only empty outposts, ghost towns, decoys, shadows. Then the jamming started. Communications died, sensors glitched, engines stalled. The command ship tried to retreat, but all they saw was static. Then one by one, their systems turned off. Not by damage, but by control. And in that final moment, a face appeared on every screen. A human man, maybe in his 40s, calm and still. Behind him, there was firelight and something massive moving in the dark. He said only one sentence. "This is your final chance." Then everything went black. Every ship in the fleet was found days later, floating without power. No one inside was harmed, but no one could remember what happened. Their memories were wiped clean. Now the Council stopped laughing. Now they whispered in fear. Now they finally asked the question they should have asked from the beginning. What happens when Deathworlders stop playing nice? Across the galaxy, species that once mocked humans started locking their doors. Allies turned silent, enemies turned paranoid, and children were told not to speak Earth's name out loud. Because something had changed. Humanity had not started a war. They hadn't invaded or sent armies. They simply stopped holding back. And in that silence, in that cold, careful revenge, the galaxy learned something they would never forget. Deathworlders don't shout. They don't warn twice. They endure, they observe, and when the time comes, they erase. Echoes of Vano 6. Investigation team arrived on Vano 6 with heavy guards and louder doubts. They came with armored suits, scanners, drones, and weapons from 5 different species. But none of it prepared them for what they saw. The colony was still standing. But it felt wrong, like something cold was watching from every shadow. The lights flickered, the wind didn't blow, and though everything looked untouched, there was no sound. No birds, no machines, not even the hum of power lines. Lieutenant Kess of the Zyrelians stepped into the main control center. He had fought in 10 wars, survived acid storms and planetary sieges, but here, on a silent Deathworlder colony. His claws trembled. The team found the control panel smashed, but one terminal, one single screen was still glowing, not broken, not hacked, just waiting. Kess stepped forward, and the screen turned blue. A soft human voice spoke. Calm, kind. We asked nicely. The screen turned white, and a video played. It showed the council laughing, mocking the human diplomat. Then it showed the word enough being burned into metal by something that couldn't be seen, only felt. Kess tried to shut the video off, but it played again and again, until the last frame froze on a human child's face, eyes wide, skin dirty, holding a toy made from broken alien tech. The words below said they were innocent. Suddenly, the power across the colony surged. Lights flickered blue. Alarms rang without control. Outside, the team's ships lifted off without command and flew into orbit, abandoning them, one drone. Operator screamed, "We've lost control." Another whispered, "We're not alone." And then they heard it, a slow sound, like breathing, mechanical, deep, echoing across metal walls. The team tried to run, but every exit sealed shut. The colony wasn't attacking them. It was watching them. One soldier shouted, "Is this human technology?" Kess shook his head, eyes wide. "No, this is something else." And then a new message appeared, glowing red on every wall. Echoes remember, echoes judge, echoes return. One by one, the lights shut off, and the colony faded into darkness. Hours later, only 2 members of the investigation team returned. They didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't even recognize their own names. Medical scans showed no injury, no trauma, but their memories were gone. The council was terrified. Who was behind this? How did a Deathworlder colony become a living trap? And most of all, how long had humanity been preparing this? A scientist from the Koran species studied the remaining footage. He paused when he found a data file hidden in the feed. It was in English, but the title was translated clearly, Project Echo. It was marked as Phase 2. That meant there was a Phase 1 and worse. A Phase 3. The scientist tried to access it, but a final screen blinked back at him with 5 simple words. You were warned, weren't you? Retaliation Command, the Council, was furious. They had lost a colony, a war fleet, and now an entire investigation team. Whispers of Deathworlder retaliation were spreading across the galaxy. Markets crashed, alliances wavered, and civilians on core worlds began to panic. In a chamber of black stone and golden light, the high command of the Galactic Council met in secret. The Kalthari Admiral slammed a metal fist against the table. They are just one world, he growled. Just one species. We cannot allow this insult to continue. Others agreed. They talked of power, of fear, of needing to show strength. But no one in that room remembered what the human ambassador had once said. We're still being nice. Within hours, Operation Iron Net was activated. The plan was simple. Send the largest multi-species fleet ever assembled, block off all trade to Earth's colonies, and cut communication lines to force a surrender. 122 warships warped into the edge of human sector Delta. Scanners reached across the void searching for targets, but found only silence. No ships, no satellites, no distress signals, only cold stars and empty space. The admiral in charge, Grand Strategist Rovik, ordered a full sweep. He was confident. After all, humans are loud, impulsive, easy to provoke. If they were hiding, they'd come out soon. But then the jamming started. First, long-range sensors failed, and communication signals distorted into static. Even internal ship networks began to glitch. One captain shouted over the comms, "Sir, our own systems are turning against us." Another cried, "Our maps are shifting, false gravity wells appearing. We're blind." And then the screens on every ship flickered, one by one. The faces of the bridge crews were replaced with a cold blue screen. A voice began to speak. It wasn't angry or loud. It was calm, patient, human. "You were warned." The crew panicked. Weapons powered up, shields activated, but nothing happened. No attack came. No ships appeared. Instead, everything shut down. Engines stopped mid-burn. Gravity fields collapsed. Crew floated helplessly as power systems failed. Every ship drifted silent, dark, and cut off. And then the stars disappeared. No alarms, no alerts, just shadows. Something massive was above them, but their sensors couldn't read it. It was as if space itself bent around it. A dark shape blocked the nearest sun, and in its shadow, smaller ships began to move, hundreds, maybe thousands. None of them appeared on scanners. None of them made a sound. One officer whispered, "What are they?" Another muttered, "Drones? Stealth tech?" But Rovik already knew the answer. This was not a war fleet. This was a message. Then came the final moment. A single broadcast played across all channels. A human voice, this time female, emotionless, said just one line: "Retaliation acknowledged." Escalation declined. Then everything turned back on. Ships repowered, weapons rearmed, gravity returned. But all the systems had been changed. Others resigned, fearing they were still being watched. No battle had taken place. No human soldier had fired a single shot. But every warrior on those ships came home knowing one thing: the Deathworlders had let them go. Not out of fear, but out of control. Because true power isn't just shown, it's measured. And now the galaxy feared something far worse than war. They feared what would happen if humans stopped declining escalation. Because this time, Earth had shown them what a Deathworlder really is. Not a fighter, not a monster, but a patient storm, waiting, watching, and remembering every insult in silence. The first strike the galaxy believed war would begin with sound. Explosions, fleets, and shouting generals. But when the Deathworlders finally struck first, there was no sound at all. No war drums, no speeches, no declarations, only silence and then absence. It began on the cold moon of Taralis, a fortress built by the Sindar Empire, surrounded by shields, cannons, sensor webs, and elite guards. Nothing had ever breached it, not even light. But one morning, the station went dark, not destroyed, not damaged, just gone, still there physically, but empty. Every system offline, every hallway deserted. When recovery teams arrived, they expected bodies, signs of a siege, maybe resistance. But instead, they found intact meals on untouched tables, chairs still, warm, lights flickering as if people had just left. Every screen now glowed with the same symbol, a single burning red fingerprint, and below it, the words, Phase 1 complete. The command center held a final surprise, a live camera feed, showing the Council's main chamber, with no visible lens, no known relay. The Deathworlders were watching them, not from outside, but from inside. Panic spread. Council members screamed for isolation, lockdown, emergency protocols. But it was too late, because while they were watching Taralis, 2 more Sindar planets went dark. One lost its gravity for 6 hours. Another had its atmosphere ignited from orbit for only 3 seconds. Enough to destroy weapons, leave the people alive, and remind them who held control. Still, no human ship had been seen, no soldiers captured, no signal traced. And then came the next move. A strategic refinery station near the star of Vekros suddenly changed ownership. Without a battle, its systems had been rewritten overnight, and its entire AI now answered only one name: Hayes. The aliens asked who Hayes was. Earth never replied, but deep in old Terran records, a name surfaced: Admiral Jonathan Hayes. Retired, missing, presumed dead, now a ghost in the machine. Ships arriving at Vekros were denied entry, not by weapons, but by their own systems locked, turned, disabled, as if their ships were no longer theirs. One Sindar warship tried to fire a warning shot. Its weapons jammed, redirected, and turned. On itself, the explosion could be seen from orbit, and the humans still hadn't shown their face. News spread faster than light. Deathworlders had created a new kind of war. One without battles, without glory. A war of whispers, shadows, and precise strikes. Species who once mocked Earth now held emergency drills, taught their children to respect Terrans, and erased jokes about Deathworlders from the public archives, because now it was clear the first strike had already ended, and no one had even seen it begin. Some called it strategy, others called it psychological warfare, but those who understood humanity knew the truth. This wasn't war. This was a message. And it was being written, one silent act at a time, right into the bones of the galaxy, and somewhere deep in the void, beyond every sensor and satellite, a black vessel floated in silence, its lights dim, its weapons cold, but its eyes awake, watching, recording, waiting, not to conquer, but to remind that when Deathworlders finally strike, they don't shout, they don't warn, they remove. The code of Fire the Council was no longer laughing. Their fleets had returned damaged without a fight. Their strongest colonies stood silent, as if haunted. No battles were seen, no humans captured. But fear was spreading faster than light. At first, they thought it was sabotage. Then, they believed it was hacking. Now they knew better. This was a plan, and it had a name. A classified document was leaked. No one knew who released it, only that it was real. It spread like wildfire across command channels, across governments, across species. A single phrase at the top of the file froze everyone who read it. Project Ember, the code of fire. No one knew when it was written, but the date was older than humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council. That meant Earth had planned this long before they were all eyes, before the galaxy even noticed them. The document wasn't about weapons. It wasn't about fleets, bombs, or soldiers. It was about psychological collapse. It was about unmaking empires from within. Silently, slowly, precisely. The first line read, "Victory is not survival. Victory is memory." It explained how to build a shadow war, not to destroy, but to make entire species doubt themselves, to make the enemy question their safety, their systems, even their history, to make them fear silence. The file listed phases: Phase 1, observation; Phase 2, erasure; Phase 3, fire. The galaxy realized something terrifying. They were already in Phase 2, and no one knew how long it had been running, or what Phase 3 would bring. Across core worlds, ancient monuments began to flicker. Galactic records glitched, entire battles erased from archives. Historical statues turned to ash overnight, and in place of names, only the symbol remained, A. Earning fingerprint, the Council demanded answers. They searched every Earth server, every diplomat's belongings. But all they found was an old message left in Earth's own capital, buried in the walls of their space embassy, etched by laser, nearly invisible. It read, "If fire is the only thing you understand, then remember who invented the match." Fear turned to silence. Silence turned to desperation. On the planet Vorex Prime, riots broke out, caused not by war, but by fear. Leaders tried to calm the public, told them humans wouldn't attack civilians, but the people didn't believe them. They had seen the footage: stations erased, fleets disabled, memory wiped, not with weapons, but with intention. It wasn't destruction. It was demonstration. Some empires offered peace. Others offered apologies. Earth still didn't respond. They remained quiet, cold, calculating. And that was the most frightening thing of all. Because if Project Ember was real, then humanity had created a plan, not just to survive war, but to become the shadow of every future war, to live in memory, not as conquerors, but as a lesson carved in flame. And now the galaxy could feel it, the weight, the heat, the quiet countdown to Phase 3. In hidden bunkers and secure rooms, powerful species whispered the same thing. Don't provoke the fire. Don't test the code. But far away, beyond their reach, on a ship that did not exist on any map, a voice whispered into the dark. Begin ignition. The ghost planet, the Council, had one last hope. A forgotten colony on the edge of human space. A planet called Eidon, once used by humans as a forward outpost, now long abandoned at least. That's what they believed. They sent a team of elite scouts, not soldiers, not diplomats, but silence-trained operatives from 5 empires, experts in stealth, observation, and extraction. They landed on Eidon under a black sun. Its atmosphere was thin, its surface dry. The planet looked dead, but that made it worse. The base was still standing, structures untouched, metal clean. Lights dim but powered, not forgotten, maintained. The scouts split into teams. They moved like shadows through the dust. No sound, no radio chatter, only gestures inside the main building. They found tables set, chairs tucked in, beds made. Someone had been here recently, or still was. A door opened on its own. A cold breeze passed through, but there was no wind outside. On the walls, messages were written, not in paint, not in blood, but etched by laser soft and smooth dozens of lines, but one repeated again and again, "You should not have come." The lead scout tried to transmit a report, but his comms were already offline. One by one, each team lost connection. And then the rooms began to change. Doors shifted, hallways twisted. What was once a straight path became a circle. Stairs led nowhere. Lights dimmed to almost nothing then. Came the whispers, not in any known language, but in a low hum that crawled into their bones. Some began hearing voices, familiar voices. Voices of friends, family, commanders long dead. One scout saw her childhood bedroom through a glass wall. Another saw Earth's moon hovering above the base, inside a sealed hallway. None of it made sense. This wasn't illusion. It was memory, twisted, weaponized, reflected back at them. A drone recorded the only image that would ever escape that mission. It showed a hallway, stretching forever, and at the end of it a child, not moving, not speaking, just watching. Her eyes were glowing red. Her skin was pale gray, and behind her, shapes flickered in the dark, not machines, not soldiers, but echoes. One of the last surviving scouts managed to send a single line of text. Before he vanished from all scans, "We are not alone here." Days later, the ship that brought them was found drifting in orbit, its systems untouched, its memory banks wiped, its crew missing. Inside the cockpit, scratched into the pilot's chair, were 5 final words. "They walk among us now." The Council demanded Earth explain, but Earth remained silent. One official whispered the word Eidon during a closed meeting. An old human diplomat smiled softly and replied, "We don't go there anymore either." The galaxy began to realize the truth. This wasn't a war. It was a lesson. Each strike, each act, each message was part of something deeper. Not revenge, not rage, but restraint. Because if this was what Deathworlders did, when they were holding back, then the galaxy didn't want to know what would happen if they didn't. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, a figure stood in the dark, watching every broadcast, every reaction, every word. And behind him, a new set of orders began to print, glowing on ancient paper, burned at the edges. Phase 3. Memory Eternal. The memory of silence. There was no official end to the war, no treaty signed, no surrender offered, because there had never been a war. Not in the way the galaxy understood it. There was only fear, only memory, and silence after Eidon. No species dared. Enter human space again. Trade routes were redrawn, orders remapped, and Earth was left alone, untouched, unchallenged, not by weakness, but because of what everyone now understood. You do not disturb the fire once it chooses stillness, children on alien worlds whispered. The stories, not just about human weapons, but about human patience, human silence, human warning, and how they only struck once, because once was always enough. The symbol of the Deathworlder was no longer just a myth. It became a holy mark, feared, studied, sometimes even worshipped. Leaders built walls against shadows they couldn't name. Empires rewrote history. Some removed Earth from their records entirely, as if forgetting could protect them. But those who remembered knew better. In deep space, on the edge of every known star chart, a single human vessel remained, motionless. Cloaked, cold, its name was never spoken aloud, but it watched, not to conquer, not to punish, but to remind that Earth had changed, that humanity had awakened something old, something dangerous, something the galaxy never wanted to meet again. It wasn't power that made them dangerous, it was restraint. It wasn't noise that made them terrifying, it was the absence of it. One alien philosopher said, the galaxy forgot pain. Then the Deathworlders reminded us, another added. They didn't want to win, they wanted to be remembered, and they were, across 10,000 star systems, across species, languages, and lifespans. The memory of Earth was passed down, not as a tale of victory, but as a lesson carved in silence, a lesson that said, do not mistake kindness for weakness, do not mistake silence for safety, do not mistake survival for surrender. Because when the Deathworlders finally got serious, the galaxy learned something it never forgot. There are monsters, born in fire, but the ones you should fear most are the ones who survive the cold. And in the end, the loudest sound the galaxy ever heard was the silence humanity left behind. The legend the sun rose over the battlefield like it had never seen war. Golden light touched the broken towers and the scorched ground. Smoke still curled from shattered tanks, and the wind carried the scent of burnt metal and hope. Unit 12 had survived, but the price had been carved deep into the earth. Sarek stood alone near the edge of the cliff. Looking down at the valley below, it was quiet now. No enemies, no orders, no screaming. Just peace, the kind that comes after everything else is gone. Behind him, voices cheered. Elias had finally woken up. The medic said it was a miracle. But Sarek knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was human will, the kind that bends reality when everything else breaks. Elias was still weak, but he asked to see Sarek first. They met in the command tent, which had been rebuilt with broken walls and stitched canvas. It wasn't pretty, but it stood, just like them. You stayed, Elias said with a raspy smile. I did, Sarek replied. You saved us. We saved each other, Sarek answered. You taught me how. Elias reached into a small metal box and pulled out something shiny. It was a human military badge, black and silver, shaped like a broken planet with a rising flame. This is the Ember crest, Elias said. We give it only to those who stood their ground when all hope was gone. Sarek hesitated. I don't deserve this, Elias looked him straight in the eye. No one ever does. Later that day, a galactic broadcast went live. The story of the battle, of Unit 12, and of the Kuroth defector who stayed, spread like wildfire across colonies, stations, and neutral zones. Beings from every species watched the footage. They saw Sarek charge with humans, bleed with them, carry them, protect them. They saw him choose them. The Kuroth Empire responded with silence. No denial, no threats. Just silence, because they knew they had already lost him. A week later, a transport ship arrived to escort Elias and the surviving squad back to Earth. The crew lined up outside, cheering as the soldiers boarded. Reporters tried to interview Sarek, but he said nothing. He didn't need to speak. His actions had already written his story. When the ship landed on Earth, the survivors were met with thunderous applause. But what shook Sarek most wasn't the sound. It was the sight of human children holding handmade signs that read, "Thank you, Unit 12. Heroes don't have species." Sarek, the brave. A boy with one arm ran up and hugged his leg without fear. Sarek froze, stunned, then slowly placed a hand on the child's shoulder. The boy looked up and whispered, "You made them come home." Sarek nodded, his throat tight. He had fought for survival, for honor, for loyalty. But now, he had fought for them. Months passed. Sarek stayed on Earth, helping train new recruits. He taught tactics, survival. But more than that, he taught them why they fight. Not for power, not for medals, but for the person next to them, for the ones who can't fight back, for the future. His name spread through military channels. Not as an enemy, not as a guest, but as a legend, a soldier who crossed the stars and rewrote his fate. One day, during a graduation ceremony at the new Earth-Kuroth Alliance Academy, Sarek was asked to speak. He stood at the podium, looking at a sea of young faces, human, alien, hybrid, all ready to serve. He paused, then said, "Once I thought humans were weak. I thought they were too emotional, too soft, too wild. I was wrong." He looked at Elias in the front row, alive, proud, wearing the same uniform as always. "Strength isn't in your weapons or your armor," Sarek continued. "It's in your will to stand when no one else will. It's in your ability to cry and still fight, to fall and still rise, to feel everything and still not break." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Then Sarek took off his old Kuroth medal and placed it on the podium. "I once wore this to serve a flag," he said. "Now I fight for something greater each other." Applause erupted, not loud, but deep. The kind that stays in your chest long after the sound fades. And from that day on, in every academy, on every base, across every world where humans served, new recruits were told the story of Unit 12, of the day the galaxy called humans weak, and one alien proved them all wrong.